Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series, the show where we take mocks from the community to inspire you to build some of your own cool stuff. This episode is going to be all about Toa. We're going to take a look at a few Toa designs and just see what's common, see what people have done, and then as a result, maybe you can learn something and build some of your own cool Toa designs. But before we do, got a quick little thing that I want to quickly say. I have created a LEGO Ideas project called The Fairy on the Flower. You are currently seeing what it looks like on the screen. There'll be a link in the description below if you could give that some support and give that some love. Then hey, maybe one day LEGO can make it a official LEGO set. And if there's anything else you want to see me put on LEGO Ideas, well, let me know and I might just do that. But before I do that, be sure to give this one a little bit of support over on LEGO Ideas. Like I said, link in the description. Would really appreciate the support on that. So, let's begin with the first mock that we're going to talk about today, which is a mock by Shakrav and is called Sirte. Really like this guy a lot. He's got a very awesome silhouette, very kind of heroic, noble kind of stance. He was really cool. I like him a lot. I really like his shield design here. He's kind of combined this Zamasphere Thornax launcher thing with the shield itself. So it's kind of a gun and shield in one. I think it's really, really cool, actually. I like that a lot. It's just a kind of clever way to kind of combine multiple weapons and you can give your character more than, just one or two weapons. You can give him two in one. It's pretty cool. I like that a lot. Something else I really like is the little masks here on the shoulders there. I've had some people before suggest, what can I do with different masks and things like that, uses for masks other than, just using it as a head. And I think this is always such a great example is whenever people have more than one of a mask and they use it for little kind of shoulder pads or something like that. I've never seen that look bad. It's always been a sort of consistently awesome looking kind of design to use any masks as shoulder armor there. And this is a great example of that, using those. I believe he was Solek is how you pronounce that Matoran's name. That's his mask there being used as the shoulder pads. It looks awesome. Really helps everything kind of flow together nicely. And it really helps with that kind of noble, heroic silhouette that this guy has. I think it's really cool. So it does a lot for the character, that one little addition there. It's pretty cool. Something else that's pretty cool is this awesome weapon design here, using some of these Hordika weapon pieces here, and then kind of combining them together there on one of those triaxle pieces, so you get this kind of funky shaped weapon there. I think that's really, really cool, and it's really awesome to see how effective and how awesome that weapon looks. And it's just a simple design. You've just added 3 blades there onto a triaxle, and as a result, you get an awesome looking weapon. And that sort of trans blue there really flows with the rest of the trans blue on this mock that's used on the mask, used on the ice pieces on the back and on the shield itself there. And so you get some kind of nice consistency throughout, and it kind of adds a nice little accent color to the mock. It's really cool to see. And speaking of that, I actually think there's a lot you can do with Toa of Ice or any kind of ice-themed mock. You take a look at Strack, you take a look at Gelu, who is the guy who is the mask that is currently being used on this mock, or Metis, any of those Glatorian characters, or heck, even the Hordika weapons there kind of have the same look to it. There are a bunch of ice-themed Glatorian sets that had these really effective, awesome ice pieces. Strack had these big chunks of ice on his shoulder. There we had this ice snowflake shield. Gelu's head has this sort of snowflake effect to it. There are a lot of different parts that really communicated that ice look. And they only came in, some more easier to get sets. They came in only kind of 3 or 4 of them, so it wouldn't be hard to get some of those pieces. And it's awesome because it can really effectively communicate that element of ice onto a Toa or any mock that you're building. So definitely look into some of those pieces, whether you've got them currently in your collection or you want to order some online or something like that. I think those are really effective, helpful pieces to use when you're making a Toa of Ice, and we see that on this mock here. The ice element is conveyed very well and very easily just through using those pieces. It's pretty cool. One final thing before we move on to the next mock, really like the legs on this mock. You take a look at those upper legs there, using one of those pre-made kind of leg connector pieces there, and then just sort of layering different lift arms and various other things like those Rakshi feet and the Visorak feet there to just kind of get this nice look. And then it flows very nicely into the bottom there, which also uses more feet pieces. And just kind of layering all of those on there, it looks really nice. And it's awesome and cool to see how much you can kind of make a non-custom element look really sort of complex and custom just by kind of layering things on it in a nice way. I think that's pretty cool. So I really like what this mock does. I think it's pretty awesome. So let's check out the next mock, which is by Sawyer Friend and is called Fonua, Toa of Magnetism. So one thing I really like about this mock is the use of the Onua Mystica mask there on the torso. A lot of people will argue that that's one of the sort of less aesthetically pleasing or less beautiful masks. I actually kind of like it. I don't mind it too much, but I think it works very, very well as a torso there. I think it's pretty cool. It's kind of a larger piece, kind of a larger mask. It's kind of got a kind of longer width to it. And it just serves very well on a torso. It's a very flat mask too. It doesn't really kind of go up too high. So it also kind of just lends itself nicely to a torso design. And we see that here in this mock, and it's very effective and looks very nice. It's a great way to kind of cover a large surface area too. You know, you don't have to kind of be too complex there. You can't just shove a mask on top and you're done with the whole torso. I think that's pretty cool. I think it's really effective, and the textures on that flow with everything else on this mock too. I think it's just really cool to see. It's a great part use. Also got a really popping cool color scheme here. I always like it when people use trans colored parts on stuff. You know, this trans yellow here really pops up against the black there, and pretty much I can't think of any color scheme where adding a trans color wouldn't kind of complement it in some way. You know, if this was just a pure sort of gunmetal and black mock, it'd be okay, but adding that nice punch of trans yellow in there does a lot for it, and I think that's something to consider with a lot of mocks. With any kind of color scheme you're looking at, adding in or introducing a trans color as a sort of accent color can do a lot for it, and can really kind of accent the color scheme, really play off it in a nice way, you know, and having this very neutral dark color scheme here, and then adding that really bright trans color. Yeah, it does a lot. I think that's cool, and that's something to consider if you've kind of got a monotone mock. Maybe introduce some trans colors. You never know what might come up and what it might look like. Also, something else on this that I think is kind of cool, you take a look at the lower arms and the lower legs here. Again, just simple pre-made limb pieces, whether it's those CCBS bones or those sort of gunmetal and Nika lower leg pieces there. Just adding on, you know, a couple awesome textured pieces like that does a lot to those parts. And, you know, you could argue that, you know, maybe going a bit more custom there might work nicer or kind of do a bit more for the mock. But I definitely think that adding in just a nice kind of textured part like that on top of a pre-existing non-custom limb just works really well, and it creates a very nice look. You know, this mock is very well rounded, very nice looking. Like you don't have to go overly complex. You can go quite simplistic and it still look awesome, and I think this is a great example of that. And an awesome example too of just adding in some kind of more dynamic, nicely textured parts to really make something pop more, to really accent something, to make it look even cooler in a different and new and exciting way. I think this is a good example of that. I like it a lot. Also, this Core Hunter head is really cool. Here's a cool connection you can do with it, where you can attach mini for your hands into little eye sockets. And that's a fun connection, and something maybe you could do if you want to use that mask. So nice work, Mr. Sawyer friend. Let us move on to the next mock, which is by Muffin Toa and is Halle Murray revamp. So that's something that you could do. Of course, you could easily build your own custom Toa, make up your own character, because that's always fun to do. Nothing wrong with that, but maybe there were a few Toa from the official LEGO sets that you absolutely loved, and you go, you know what, I actually want to build my own version of that, or I want to kind of play around with a few concepts of that Toa explored. Nothing wrong with that. So, why not revamp one of your favorite sets? And let's be honest, the Toa Murray, some of the coolest Bionicle sets, and Halle Murray, definitely one of the coolest Bionicle Toa, at least in my opinion. I think she was pretty rad. So, why not revamp her? And there's some awesome stuff going on here. This is actually a slightly older mock. Muffin Toa is a builder who doesn't really post much anymore, but a lot of his stuff, I think, still stands the test of time today, and it's really high quality stuff, so I definitely love covering some of his stuff on the show. And there's a lot we can learn from it, so let's dive on in and talk about that. So one of the things I like about this is using those insectoid wings there on the back here. You know, that beautiful trans blue, and that really complements the dark blue color scheme of Halle Murray. And she had those really cool wings in the actual set. I think playing with these insectoid wings here is a great way to kind of expand upon that. And that's essentially what revamping a set is, isn't it? Is kind of taking little aspects of what they did in the set and just finding a new way of looking at it, approaching it from a different perspective, or using different pieces to achieve the same look or something like that. So definitely that's something to consider when you're revamping a set, you know, it might be fun. And I think that's a really, really beautiful kind of accent point on this mock, you know, having those insectoid wings there. It's really kind of my favorite part on this mock, and it definitely makes this stand out more because they've used those more sort of obscure pieces there, which, you know, as cool as those parts are, I don't really see too many people using them nowadays. But they're really awesome pieces, so it's cool to see them being used on a mock, and so effectively too. It's awesome. Something else I really like is the upper arm design here, using those Vaki heads there. It's sort of the basis of that whole arm design itself. You know, they've got the ball joint there, which is connecting into the side of the torso. And then you kind of get the cool shape of the Vaki head forming the sort of outside of the arm. and you're able to kind of build a lot off of that, adding in all that green and that lime there to just kind of detail it up and add a bit more to it. It's really cool. It looks nice. I like it a lot. It's just a great way to approach an arm design using those Vaki heads. So if you've got some of those lying around, maybe that is the piece to use for your upper arm designs. You never know. Also nice to introduce some just traditional green instead of the lime on this mock. So he's got a little bit of both, obviously. He's got a bit of lime and a bit of normal green. But those Mari sets were very famously known for always having those lime connector pieces break. So maybe introducing a bit of green is a good idea so that your parts don't break on you while you're building. I think that's a nice addition that not only looks really good, because I'm surprised at how awesome the very subtle hints of lime up against that Mutta green there. Looks very nice. It's a nice little accent, but yeah, also a good idea so that your parts aren't breaking. I like that a lot. So yeah, a really awesome revamp of a really awesome set. Nice job, Muffin Toa. Let us move on to the bonus mock, which is a submitted mock by Steampunk Tahu, and it is called Gavan Toa of Fire. So I always think introducing cloth elements on any mock is a great idea. You know, you take a look at a few mocks that we've seen on the show here. I've sometimes said that you can kind of cheat, you know, you can kind of get a cloth element and not really detail up the legs too much, so you just sort of put a cloth over it, and then no one needs to know that you didn't really do too much on those legs because you can't see it, the cloth looks fine, you're good. But this mock defies that little tip that I sometimes give, and he's actually built a fully fledged awesome looking mock and then decided to put the cape around it. And I think that's really cool because with the cape on or with the cape off, or the waistcoat, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, he still looks awesome in both forms, and I love that. I love that a lot. And I think it's a really good indicator and example of just how effective adding a cloth element can be to a mock. You know, he gets this cool kind of almost samurai shogun kind of look with that cloth element, and then he takes it off and he looks like a sort of martial artist or something, especially with his stuff there. It's like he's doing kendo and stuff. He's awesome. He's really, really cool. So he gets these two cool, unique looks that kind of feed into each other, whether he's got that cloth element on or not. I love that a lot. I think that's really cool, and I definitely recommend, hey, if you're building a Toa, take a look at some cloth elements, see if you can introduce them on the mock in some fashion, because it can do a lot for the mock, like we're seeing here. And you might be like, I don't have any cloth elements. Well, take a look at your Goodwills, take a look at your charity shops, take a look at your Targets, anywhere that you may live that sells any Lego. You're probably going to find some clearance Star Wars Ultra Build sets, and most of them come with cloth elements, so you could probably get some pretty cheap. And you can end up using some new and interesting pieces and put that on your mock. Why not give that a go? Or just go on Bricklink and pick up some of those Star Wars Ultra Build sets, because people are trying to sell those and they are not having a good time in selling them, so you could probably get them pretty cheap. So there's my recommendation for you. Totally hit my mic just then, my bad. Anyway, this is a really awesome mock. So one thing I like a lot is the fact that he's used that copper huna on this mock here. You might be like, where did that copper huna come from? Well, if I remember correctly, this was a polybag kind of thing that you got at Legoland, just kind of as a random promotion one year. This was ages ago, though. This was like maybe 10 or 13 years ago. It was a while ago. And yeah, you got a copper huna, and I think you got a... Oh, I'm forgetting the name of the other mask. It's the Mask of Mind Control, wasn't it? Komau. You got a copper Komau with it as well. And some of them, if you hold them up to the light and you can kind of see through them, they're worth a lot more. But if you hold it up to the light and you can't see through it, it's just a copper huna, and it's kind of worth like... Well, when I bought mine, it was worth like $5. It might have gone up now, because a lot of Bionicle masks are a lot more expensive nowadays, which is weird. But the copper huna is a sort of more interesting kind of collector piece there, and I mean, give a look on Bricklink, just type in copper huna and see what comes up. You might be able to get a really interesting, awesome looking mask, because it is. When it's in that color, it's really awesome. But there is that one problem of it's that kind of funky copper color, which there's really not a lot of pieces in that color. In fact, I almost want to say that's the only piece in that color, or at least... You know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's like one or two others, but it's rare to find pieces that have that color. So you might be like, well, how can I use it? Well, I think this mock has done a fantastic job of implementing that in a very seamless way. You know, the dark red and that old gold there really kind of complement that copper color. Really surprisingly, I wouldn't have expected that to work so well, but we see that here, and it does. So I think that's pretty cool. So if you've got some of those masks, even like that speckled Avoki, or any of the sort of weirder colored Lego pieces that, you know, it's kind of an outlier color. You're like, I don't know how to use this with any other pieces. I just don't have a lot of pieces in that color, or pieces in that color simply don't exist. play around with some colors that are at least kind of close to it and see if, like this mock, you can actually match it in a funky way that it may not be a perfect color match, but it still has various shades of that color inside it, and it's kind of closer to it, and you can kind of complement it nicely, like we see on this mock here. So very nice work, Steampunk Tahu, an awesome Toa mock, and 4 awesome Toa mocks in this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series. If you got inspired by this show, by this episode, by anything that I put on the channel, let me know. I'm always happy to hear some nice little, hey Ben, you inspired me. That's awesome. I'm always happy to hear that, and that's our goal here. So I definitely want to know if you got inspired, and I definitely want to see what you made. Let me know. I want to see the cool stuff that you built. Send it to me in a message. Leave it in a link below. Happy to see it. Anyway, speaking of seeing stuff, there's a weird transition. Check the links in the description below for the mocks that you saw in today's episode. Be sure to check out what the other stuff that these guys have done. Leave a comment, leave some love on that guy's stuff, because, there's some awesome builders. And also, while you're there in the description, be sure to check out my Patreon and to check out some of my social media stuff. You can see some of the other stuff that I do on Flickr, mock pages, Facebook, all that stuff. And Instagram. Anyway, that's it for this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, guys.